Welcome, gamers. This is a bit of a bittersweet moment for me, actually. It's sort of funny. I've been looking forward to the Storm of Arrows DLC for Feudal Glory 2 Medieval ever since Feudal Glory 2 Medieval was announced. It's been something I've been super looking forward to. It's by far my most favourite add-on that was actually put in the original Feudal Glory game. I think it was also the furthest that the actual tabletop went as well. Like the Storm of Arrows sort of additions for the tabletop series was, and this we're talking a long time ago now, but this is the end. That makes it's sort of like the last book in a series, and you know that this last book is the best book in the series, and you know that when you finish it, you're going to sort of be sad, and it's sort of a bit like that because it feels like, and I hope that it's not. I hope that they go on to other things. In fact, we should get some hashtag campaigns going for Feudal Glory 2 Lord of the Rings, or Feudal Glory 2 Warhammer, or Feudal Glory 2 Game of Thrones. Something like that would be awesome. I mean, I hope it's got other legs after this, because this is sort of like the era now, the Storm of Arrows era. In fact, let's just start by having a look at this thing. Let's just go into a battle, for example, and we'll just go into a. I'll show you a lot into here. I won't actually be playing much into here. I just want to show you what this DLC brings to the game, which is really super exciting. Like it's as I say, I've been looking forward to this ever since Medieval was even announced. So just go across to custom battle, and we'll have a bit of a look at what's actually in here. So anyway, if we go to if I go to sort of potluck, we'll just go and change the dates to really what this one does is it starts around about the year 1300, a little bit in. I think it's set maybe sort of 5 years into the 1300s, and then finishes pretty much in the middle of the 1400s. But let's just say 1500. So it takes an era, and if we look at everything sort of historically. The lead up until this time was very much the knights on horses were dominating, like for the couple of hundred years before this. So if we go right back, I mean, you've got you sort of got your Viking era back into here, where you're looking at your Huskarls and your axemen and so on and so forth like this. The knights weren't very strongly armoured, or progressively. Then you sort of get up into around your 1100s, and then you start looking at very, very heavily armoured knights on horseback. And then as you sort of go further forward, you get to the 1300s, and there's still got a lot of knights on horseback. But this is the era between 1300 and in the middle of the 1400s. You're looking at the transition where infantry became stronger than horsemen in many cases. So we're sort of in a very finely balanced era where, like for example, the French forces in this era is just all knights, pretty much all knights in that sort of era, and except at the very end of this era, then they start to sort of balance things out, which is when they start to kick the British out of France. Like this is an era where the British or the English had some incredible victories all over the place, actually, because of their foot soldiers, and they even sort of were on the receiving end, like at Bannockburn and battles like that. So there's some really interesting times in this era where foot soldiers did incredibly well against knights. So the French had sort of gone all in on knights for like 150 years. They were like that. That was how they fought their battles. And then you see as this one sort of progresses through, the English, like we've got things like the Anglo-Irish in through this side. And if I have a look at any of these sorts of things, like this is sort of at the transition into this sort of period, we probably will sort of find we've got like a few different longbowmen in through here. Now, the longbowmen, this is really the era of the longbowmen, but it's not really always just here. Certainly in northwestern Europe, the longbow had started to become more prevalent. And I guess the telling point here is how much it's going to cost. 54 is pretty high for any sort of foot soldier like this that isn't heavily armoured, and these guys aren't heavily armoured, but I can only get 4 of them in this particular grouping. As we go through, we then find that they just get stronger and stronger, I would assume. Actually, I'm just talking over my arse there, but anyway. So longbowmen, we've now got 6. We've got raw longbowmen. We can bring even more through. It's the same cost in through this side. Anglo-Irish in through this side, if we have a bit of a look. Billmen now. Billmen, this is interesting. We're starting to now get the pikes are now starting to come into things. And we've still got 5. Actually, it's gone backwards a little bit, but it's then got more for billmen. We've got bombards, which are cannons. So you're starting to sort of now see cannons coming through. And this is just from one set, and this is not really the typical longbowman set. And then we finally get into the 1415s and beyond. Now, to put this into perspective, in fact, we'll have a look at this for battles, but 1415 is essentially the Battle of Agincourt. And so everything after that is post-Agincourt, and everything leading up to that is really the domination of longbowmen as far as the British or the English are concerned. So we've got longbowmen, again, 5, and not very many in through here. They're sort of mainly going back out with Irish kerns and so on and so forth. So they've gone almost backwards into other areas because they know now how to deal with mounted cavalry. So it's sort of it's interesting, very, very interesting. If we have a look through, like this is pretty much going to go through the different sorts of groupings that you have. Let's just stick with the British for now, and then we'll come back and look at some of the others. So if we go to the English, now the English sort of, you've got the English, which was the lead up, and then we go into the actual continental and British English. So the two different types from the 1320s and out through there. Now this is sort of like your Crecy era, actually even before, I think, but this is sort of like Crecy. So if we have a look at this one and have a look at their listing, we're going to sort of see that they've got like a lot of longbowmen. Again, the same ones that we saw there before with the 50 costing 54. They use, now the knights that were before are now called men-at-arms. So if we just go back and close that for a second and go back to the previous one, this listing through here, that does take us sort of towards Crecy. I don't know if this one changed. Yeah, we've got knights and sergeants, and we've got like a fair number of them. We've got up to 9 of them in this particular listing. Longbowmen are still there, same longbowmen that we sort of see in the other one. So they're there still. But as we come into this era, we'll then find that they now start to be called something different. So the knights are no longer called knights. They can be like, you've had city knights and so on and so forth. But they're now knights. They're now men at arms, and there's less of them in the groupings. This one does still have hobliars, which is sort of like your standard cavalry, and these are still useful for rounding things up, but they're not your main fighting troops anymore. And then they started to dismount them. So these guys are basically extremely heavily armoured. Like these are fully armoured, but on foot. And so they're then using with their big axes, their heavy weapons. And so these are armed with heavy weapons. You've got a lot more of them than what you have with the mounted guys. And so we're now looking at sort of like I guess when you look back in the ancient era, you're looking at Roman legion type stuff again, where you've got these extremely strong infantry that can sort of crash their way through anything. They're going to be very slow, of course, but then supported very heavily with longbowmen. So we now start to see massive amounts of these longbowmen coming in this early 1300s era. And as we sort of go through, we sort of then can take it through in the continental model all the way through to Agincourt. This is the era of Agincourt in through here. And we'll now see a different sort of model. I don't know if we'll see it in this first model between 1350 and 1440. No, we're just seeing longbowmen, but still big numbers of them, dismounted men-at-arms. So we've got very similar look to what's going on. We are seeing like mounted guns. These are artillery, like so we're getting. We've got like we are seeing gunpowder now coming into it. And as we get into the Agincourt era, we now have a different style of longbowmen. We've got longbowmen with stakes, and they can create their own defences, which is really fascinating as well. And so these have also then got combinations. Again, massive numbers of these. A lot less, even with the dismounted men-at-arms and the men-at-arms. So very, very few mounted knights. Still a fair number of dismounted knights. In this case, they are just called men-at-arms. But these are now dismounted, so they're going to be fighting on foot predominantly, supported very, very heavily by masses of longbowmen. So it's interesting just seeing the English model, and then as it sort of goes through into the back end of that particular era, we've got the continental model back out through this side. Have a bit of a look, and we've still got the longbowmen with stakes, still got a lot of those. Less dismounted men-at-arms, still the same number in through there. Yeah, so only slight differences back in through that side. Let's have a look at the French side, because the French didn't learn their lessons. And so the French, through this era, if we have a look at we'll start at the 1320s and sort of work our way through. So this is sort of like the French around the Battle of Crecy, I guess, would sort of be this sort of model. So you can see there that they are now called men-at-arms as well. This is their knights, and they've got masses of them. And look at the numbers of everything else, really very low, except for crossbowmen. So they're using sort of almost like pavasiers with the big shield, as you can sort of see in through there, along with the along with the crossbowmen. So they're slow to load. They still can fight a swordsman. So these are sort of like these are pretty well, like this is worth it at 41. They are actually very, very good. But this is mainly they're going to be their sort of footmen now are going to be pretty much. They do have raw longbowmen because they could never really get fully trained. So they were trying to sort of emulate what was happening, but they just couldn't do it. Never really had enough in that sort of era. If we sort of close that one off and have a look at the back end of it, where they're sort of like, this is the Battle of Crecy sort of style in through this side. Sorry, Battle of Agincourt. I'm sort of just using Crecy and Agincourt as two different points, which were about how far apart were they? About 100 years apart. And so it's just interesting historically to look at this one. You can see there's a lot more stuff going on in here. Still got big numbers of knights, nowhere near as what it was before. So the knights are coming backwards. They're realising that they can't really dominate the battlefields anymore with mounted knights, but they still have got the capacity for a lot of them. They've got the mercenaries as well. They've actually got capacity for having some mercenaries inside this area. Lesser men-at-arms in through there as well. This is interesting as well, just the way that the French sort of stay with the with the knights. I actually almost think I would prefer to be playing with a French army just for the fun of it than the English army, where they sort of put down the stakes, sort of have their a line of longbowmen, and then just wait for armies to sort of come into them. I mean, both are going to be fun to play. They've got bombards, which are sort of big cannons. You've got light guns in through here as well. Dismounted men-at-arms. It's now getting a lot more of these, for example. The billmen as well, which have got the long, heavy weapons. So these are quite interesting as well. But this is now, you can see that the dismounted men-at-arms are actually costing more because they've got double the number of men, even though they don't move anywhere near as strongly. But this is now really interesting. It's really a fascinating era, just historically, but also for this game, which is why I've been looking forward to this for so long. And now finally it's here, and there probably is the end, and that's that whole bit of sweet things just that comes flooding back. Again, we're seeing a lot of these more pavasier style crossbowmen, and once again just raw longbowmen where they can sort of get them, raw crossbowmen. So these are sort of the guys that didn't quite make it. So the French sort of move that way, and at the very end, I haven't had a look at this, but they should be having even less of the knights. Actually, no, they've gone back to that. So they've still got a lot of those. Dismounted are still about the same number. They do actually now bring in their own longbowmen at this stage. That's interesting. Okay, and these are the ones with stakes as well. So yeah, it's very, very interesting to sort of see the transition across the different groups over time. Now that really does talk a lot about the English and the French. It's and I gravitate there, and I apologise for that if you're not sort of like. I guess it's a bit Anglo-centric of me, and that's because Australia was essentially settled, and my background is of course going to be coming from Britain because of the colonisation. So I'd sort of look at that sort of era. But there's a lot to like about this. It's not just focused in here. I'm guessing that's going to be the focus for a lot of people. But there's a lot that goes on through here, like the Florentine, for example, in through this side. This should be the Italian city-states. Let's just have a quick drink. So you've got this is interesting as well. You've got like largely mercenary armies raised by contracts, condotti, with mercenary captains. These condotti soon have a monopoly of military power in Italy. Again, fascinating. Like through this era, we've got we sort of always, from if you are Anglo-centric, you don't think about the city-states much, and about what was going on in there. But this one as well will actually have like a whole range of like mercenary men-at-arms, which costs less, but a lot of them. So they're very much like the French model, but instead of they don't have the money to have like a standing army, so they're raising things, and these are like mishmashes of all sorts of things. They've got like the mercenary knights. You've then got your Hungarian horse archers, which are really sort of like inspired or sort of copied from the Muslim attackers that they were sort of fighting. Light horse crossbowmen as well. So it's a real mishmash of different things. Again, very interesting. You dismounted mercenary men-at-arms. So again, it's costing less. These aren't these are above average, not superior quality, which is what the difference is between them and, say, the French model. It's just they're not quite as well disciplined. You've got the parvasiers and crossbowmen. So this is different to... Actually, where are the crossbowmen? They've got crossbowmen down here, which essentially are similar. These are crossbows and swordsmen. These would be about the same, really. They're going to be... Here we go. Yeah, these are different. So the parvasiers and crossbowmen are different again. They do have capabilities mainly with crossbow. They also have a capability for defensive spearmen, so that it's going to be hard for mounted troops to actually hit these, plus swordsmen as well. So again, an interesting model that we sort of see in through this side. And they also do have their longbowmen as well. They've just brought in the various longbowmen in at that sort of 54 rate, which is fairly expensive, as I say, for medium troops. It's nicely done. It's very, very nicely done. And of course, I always, when I'm looking at the stuff in my head, I'm going sort of like, well, they're mounted. We're looking at heavy, which means that they can't go into rough terrain. Then you're looking at your mediums in through here as well, if they have to then fight. So it's a very, very interesting mix, I'm finding anyway. And so that's your Italian model, which again is super interesting. You've got your free canton, which is back up through the Holland, Counts of Holland. So you've got these as well. Then they'll be sort of similar, I guess, to the English or French model in this later area. Actually, no, they're not. They've got this is interesting as well. They've got their own spearmen. This is quite light, isn't it? Really, quite a light force that they actually have in through here. It's mainly spearmen. Just these are medium foot. So whereas in the free canton spearmen are actually more lightly, they work better in rough terrain. I wasn't expecting to see that, to be honest. Not like this. I like that all the way through. I guess they would be. I haven't really played with these before. Yeah, they are. Their own spearmen, medium foot spearmen, which is sort of unusual. In fact, they're offensive spearmen, so they can do all sorts of things. Very, very cheap. There'll be masses of them. So again, very interesting way of actually needing to sort of use the combat with this. The thing I like about this, and I shouldn't sort of probably say it, but what I'm liking is I'm not really seeing very many horse archers. It's funny, it's the end of the horse archers as well. We looked at French, the German as well. We're now seeing all sorts of different ways of looking at the Germans. Let's have a look at the around the 1320 mark. So you've got the German, the city-based German, like the city-state-based guys in through here. This list covers the armies of various German city leagues, like the Hanseatic League, etc. And so this will be very different. This is in the southeast. We also have, for the same era, northwest. So we're looking at the more Teutonic sort of style. If we have a look at these guys and have a look at their list, men-at-arms prefer to fight on foot. So these actually are mounted, but you can actually take them. That's interesting. I never would have thought I would have seen that listed as what to do. Mercenary men-at-arms in through here as well. So these are cobbled together. Light guns, halberdiers back in through this side as well. So we're starting to now see the pike and shot era. By the way, I should mention that after this era, we then do get into the pike and shot era. And of course, Germany then becomes a massive battleground for that next era. This is just the precursor before Germany just goes crazy with the Reformation, and which is where the halberdiers sort of really start to dominate battlefields. Armoured spearmen in through this side as well. That's interesting. Defensive, free canton spearmen. So they've got these in probably as mercenaries. It's interesting to sort of see these. It's in northwest. Actually, northwest, of course. Northwest is going to be more towards Holland. I'm thinking, I've got my west and east sort of confused. Yeah, so that's not going to be that different. It's probably going to be the southeast that would be interesting. Now, this should have an influence from Hungary. So if we have a look at this one, we're going to sort of see men-at-arms prefer to fight on foot, mercenary crossbowmen. Actually, no, we're not. But we're not seeing any sort of longbowmen here at all. These armies are fairly balanced, actually. They've still got the old style spearmen and just the crossbowmen again with the big shields. Interesting stuff. I find it interesting. I'm just itching to sort of do a series, and it's so much to play with. There's just so much here. Then we have things, for example, like even in this 1320 era, we then got feudal. Now, what's feudal? This covers the feudal armies of the German princes and other powerful nobles, as well as those of various short-lived knightly leagues. Interesting stuff again. Like, it's just, what are they going to have? Mainly, they're going to have a lot of men-at-arms, as many as they can afford, essentially, and then they're going to have like just basic old spearmen, armoured spearmen. So they're going back to the old model. This is the transition period between the new look and they're still getting some gunpowder into it, but not a hell of a lot. It's mainly still just the old spearmen. That's interesting. Okay, then we have a look at the Imperial. So we've got Imperial. This is the Holy Roman Empire. So this would be much more cohesive. This should be sort of more of a bigger standing army, which has got men-at-arms. It does still have mercenaries and a lot more of them. So a lot more knights in here than what was in there before. Light guns again, halberdiers up there, looking at defensive spearmen. So it's very similar. The German city-states are very, very similar. But you can see these are essentially the precursors as we move through the German list. We then go down to the 14, like this last one in through here. If we have a look at the Imperials, or if even any of these, I would think, for this sort of era. Look, I'll just go Imperial, have a bit of a look. We should see more halberdiers, I think. No, we only got two, but still getting defensive spearmen. Armoured defensive spearmen in through there as well. Getting the crossbowmen now as well. So we're starting to head towards actually handgunners now coming into it as well. Yeah, this is really interesting. Really interesting. So anyway, that's the German era. Sorry, not German era, the German aspect of what's been brought in. Now, this is another one that's interesting. Granada, the south of Spain. So the Kingdom of Granada was the last surviving remnant of Muslim rule in the Iberian Peninsula. And so Spain within itself, the restoration has largely sort of ground to a halt. Granada is still sort of where it actually is. I mean, they're still kicking them out essentially until the 1490s, which is sort of when the pike and shot era does really sort of kick in a big way. In fact, it sort of says there this covers the Grenadine armies from 1320 until the fall of the kingdom in 1492. That was such a pivotal year. 1492 really was the transition into the modern era. And it just, coinciding with so much, the discovery of the Americas and things like this in that sort of era, ruled by the Nasrid dynasty. So this is actually their last sort of hold on to power as well. They've got mercenary knights, armoured Muslim lances in through here, which are just cavalry. They're not actually knightly lances, so they move faster, but they're not as heavily armoured. Muslim cavalry. There's probably going to be Muslim light crossbowmen. Javelins as well, so just light horse, a lot of them. So harassment, we're looking at a lot of harassers, and a lot of just bowmen essentially that would be sort of rushing forward. Interesting again, very, very interesting. I wouldn't like to play as them, to be honest. I think that would be really hard. Let's just close that one off. So you've got got those. You've also then got the on the Iberian Peninsula. If we have a quick look, a quick skim through, what else is there we can have a look at? What would they be called, actually? It'd probably be before that. Castilian, there we go. So you get the Castilian forces as well from around this sort of era. So this is the force of Castile. So Castilian and Leonese back in through here. The Aragonese back in through this side as well. So these would all be your typical your Spanish forces in this era. So we're looking at a lot of knights again. So looking, I guess, more, just thinking of the French influence sort of kicking in through this side. Just still crossbowmen. So not very many, and even they've got some Muslim fighters in through this side as well, I think. Have they? Yeah, fierce Aragonese medium foot. No, they're not, actually. I thought they would. Jeanettes. No, none of those are. Okay, no, they're not. I thought they would be sort of mixing them up a little bit back in through there. You've got other things as well, which is quite interesting, and I won't keep on going on about this, but you've got your Polish, and the Polish now starts to, the Polish and Lithuanian. I don't think Lithuania would be, Yeah, here we go. You've got Lithuanian rebels, Lithuanians as well in this particular era. This is sort of like where the Polish and Lithuanian forces now start to combine to fight back against the Teutonic Knights. And so we're looking at just still the old noble cavalry, but then we're looking at a lot more of like Lithuanian cavalry in through here. So harassment. This is probably about as close as we're going to get to horse archer stuff, really, in this sort of area. But this is of course, we're now looking at the eastern areas of the actual map itself. Back and through this side, you've then got so that's your Lithuanian. Your Polish will be very similar, I would think, in that era. I am just focusing around that Battle of Crecy era in through here. So Strzelecki's, or whatever they're called, back and through there, a lot of them dominating the list. Pavasiers and crossbowmen as well. So a bit of a mishmash in through this side. So this is where Poland and Lithuania start to sort of dominate against the Teutonic Knights. If you have a look at the Teutonic Knights, they would also, so their order still stays around, but do they change? They do actually, don't they? Teutonic Order Men-at-Arms. So these are now called something different. They were called Teutonic Order Knights up until this point, but there's less of them in their list. It's really now dominated. It's dominated by a lot of harassing forces, more so than the big heavy knights that came before them. They've still got the basic old spearmen. They've got a lot of levies, just really cheap stuff in amongst the knights. It's it's really cool. It's just it's so different, isn't it? Each list is so different. Venetians. This is interesting. City-state. Again, this should be full of mercenary. Yeah, mercenary men-at-arms, but a lot of them. Wow. Because the Venetians could afford it. The Genoese, do they have the Genoese forces? I'm still just Genoese. No, they don't. I'm not sure which era that actually is. Even the Welsh, like a Welsh there for 9 years, basically in the early 1400s. I guess that's a rebellion. This list covers the army of Owain Glyndwr's rebellion against the English rule, and so this will have Welsh. That's got normal longbowmen and Welsh longbowmen. Yeah. Anyway, it's just fascinating, the actual list itself. There's a lot that's been added. I think 40 something different orders of battle have been sort of put into this. Some of these are still showing up from the older one, but there's a lot in here. Even things like you got the Irish. Now, Robert the Bruce actually was Scottish, but I didn't know this actually, but after his victory over the English at the Battle of Bannockburn in 1314, the Scottish King Robert the Bruce was invited by some of the native Irish to send an army to drive out the Norman settlers, in return for which they would be crowned his brother Edward High King of Ireland. So there we go. I didn't even know that's where he went afterwards. So you sort of hear about the Battle of Bannockburn and Robert the Bruce, and that's the last of it. So if we have a look at Scottish forces, like up until that era, so the Scots, which one would that one be? I'm guessing it's this one. No, it wouldn't be that one there. I don't know if that would sort of cover his. That's the era of it. I don't know. It's a funny one. Anyway, I loved the Scottish forces leading up to this, with their Scottish spearmen. These are really, really cool. Really cool. It's this is not that one there, but the one before that. This Scottish force here, which I'm guessing, like based on what we're seeing through here, would be the group from Robert the Bruce. But I'm not sure. I'm not sure about this one. Again, just dominated by these Scottish spearmen. Yeah, very, very strong. And this early model spearman of being able to form a square and sort of defend against knights is really, really quite interesting. But they don't have the archers. They don't have the ranged capability. So yeah, it's just so interesting the way that the different models. Like I'm just thinking now about the British fighting against the Scots in this sort of way. Like do the English? The British, if you have a look at this one here, for example, how many longbowmen do they have? They've just got the basic old longbowmen here. Not that many. They're all probably fighting overseas at that time, so they're not really sort of like at home. They don't have the massive amounts that they had on their continental armies. Their continental armies were dominated by longbowmen. Yeah, fascinating. It's really fascinating. I can't wait to do a series on this, so that will be coming fairly soon. Wow, we've only just been looking at the list, and there's still so much to talk about here. let's just go back out. Epic battles. Storm of Arrows, which is the DLC that we're looking at, and launch this one. Have a bit of a look. So we've got, what's that, 3, 6, 7, 8. So we've got 8 dedicated battles, and these are really interesting. I've opened up a few of them. You can see we've still got the Golden Horde and the Rus. So this actually does a good job of showing you the interesting aspects of what was going on around in this 150 years that they've covered. In fact, it's just over 100 years that they've actually got with the battles. But you've got the Flemish and the French sort of way up and through here with around the Battle of, like, for Calais. Then you've got your on the borders in through here with the Bernese and the Freiburger. So I'm guessing that, I don't know what that is actually. That's I know that that's that would be the Swiss, I guess. Sort of. Well, I don't know about this battle. I've never heard of it. The Battle of Lorpen. Interesting. Crecy, of course, where you've got the English and the French back up through here near Calais. You've then got this one here where the Rus start to fight back against the Golden Horde. So this is again a transitional period for them as well. You've then got the Castilians and the Portuguese back over here in the Iberian Peninsula. You've got the Veronese and the Paduans in Italy. So just sort of in the area sort of leading out towards Venice, I guess. So that would be interesting again. You then end up having armies of mercenaries, I guess, fighting each other, which again would be an interesting thing to look at. You've got the Battle of Grunwald way back up through here. This is actually the battle where the Polish and Lithuanian forces start to sort of try to wrest control back away from the Teutonic Order, which had been sort of dominating this area of Europe for the previous couple of 100 years. And then you've got Agincourt again with the French and the English and the French. This is sort of like the last hurrah for the English before the French start to take back all of their lost land. I mean, at this point in time, I think the English control a lot of France in around this era, and then it was after this that they started to lose it all. So this is sort of like the last lesson to be learnt, I guess. And this is really interesting. I'll show you Crecy very briefly, and I'll show you Agincourt very briefly, because the longbowmen, I mean, it is called Storm of Arrows, so of course we've got to look at the longbowmen. Let's just have a quick look at those. We'll just accept this one. All right, so here we are, Battle of Crecy. Let's just get into it. Get out of there. Got a few points, so you can sort of round your armies out a little bit. You've got a few little things that you can bring in. You can see we don't have anything in this particular list where we don't have any mounted units at all. Everyone is dismounted. I'll just autofill and we'll just accept this. So this is the Battle of Crecy, and just wanted to have a look at the army list. Let's just go Shift 3 so that we're looking down low at the forces. So here we go. So they've sort of dug the ground up and then put some spikes in the ground. This is the precursor to the spikes, but these are permanent fixtures. So they've prepared the ground beforehand. They can't just go and put their spikes down. So they're not moving with spikes. And so these guys, when we have a look at them, I'll just move this around a little bit. These are just average. They are longbowmen. The interesting thing with this, and this is sort of like the default for all longbowmen in the game, is 5 turns of ammunition, not 4. Actually, was it 4 or 5? I can't remember. No, it's 4. It's always been 5 actually. So no, forget that. But that's your stock standard longbowmen. Now, even in the game, that is actually the way it does sort of come. These look cool, don't they? These are your knights, your undrilled heavy foot, your English men at arms, ready to go crashing in with their heavy weapons. It's fascinating. It's an awesome looking game. It just looks awesome. Anyway, that's the Battle of Crecy, and so they're on the hill, slight rise through there. They've got advantages because of the hill, and then over through here we've then got a whole lot of. I'll just swing this around and we'll have a look at the French forces. So we've got French crossbowmen sort of leading the way at the front, and then we have knights, and we have knights, and we have more knights. They're absolutely everywhere. It's really fascinating. Again, like this is like it looks incredibly interesting. This the whole way this has been set up. I'll just go Shift 3. So that is the French forces there, just row upon row of mounted knights, except for one group in the middle there of just these. Actually, there's a few men at arms there on the ground, but then they're still interspersed with a lot of mounted knights. So that's the French model. longbowmen are the English model. It's yeah, very very interesting part of history. Let's open up now. Just go back to the main menu and open up Agincourt. Right, so here we go. French crossbowmen, etc., etc. Just sort of setting the scene. This has been heavily crafted. This particular battle, and I'll zoom in a little bit on this one and just sort of zoom around and have a bit of a look. One of the things, again, you can really sort of see the painterly feel of the ground that we actually have down this way. Now, this is all called muddy field. This is not something that I can find in the game. I've gone into the editor to see, oh wow, is that a new terrain model that we can actually now have as well? But I don't think it is, because I think it's just been cobbled together using a marsh piece of tile along with just grass, I think. And if I just press control, all this is not open, which makes it very difficult for knights to operate in the muddy field, but it doesn't really stop anything else, which is great. So I don't think that we're going to see that in the random games, which is what I tend to play. But again, it's very interesting to sort of see that the whole battlefield, even way back over here, is still all muddy field. So this has all been set up to be not open, grassland that's not open. So it's still going to have, like, everyone can still sort of, like, all of these guys won't have any problem at all fighting in there, but the knights will. They'll have a lot of trouble because it's all muddy. For the actual longbowmen, these are quite interesting now, because these are the ones where in this particular map they have 10 ammunition. So they've got double the ammunition of a normal archer, which means that they can just keep on firing and firing and firing into the French forces. Now that, I'm pretty sure, has been ramped up, just for this particular scenario. So that's special for the scenario. And that's interesting to sort of see that that's been built for the scenario, because they do use the scenario builder to do this. I'm pretty sure that if you wanted to, you could go in and edit your own battles with these sorts of things in mind. This is your more late era crossbowmen. Just have a bit of a look at what they're up to there. So they're fairly heavily armoured. They do actually have swords, but then they have this aspect where they can actually go and place the stakes. They can move. They have to not have moved that particular turn, but they can basically just place stakes, and you can then end up getting like an actual force there. But as soon as they move, they can't do this anymore. So and that then puts them in behind obstacles, and so that means that this later English force can actually then move and protect themselves essentially anywhere they like on the battlefield, which is, I'm really looking forward to playing that as well. So yeah, I've been so looking forward to this DLC. I just couldn't wait. I'm like a kid in a candy store. It's really really cool. This one this one's already in an obstacle, so I could actually just sort of sit that one up there and just sort of leave it and finish off the obstacle in the front there. So this is almost like essentially it would be like it was inside a city, I guess, in the sense that if we click over the top of this one, this is an obstacle. Foot gets cover if stationary, plus protection versus flank and rear charges, overlappers and cavalry, plus combat advantages. So they get all sorts of different things by being behind these spikes. So it means that the only way that really the French would be able to break through would be to get their men-at-arms to come through and smash their way through these. It's interesting, and because it's muddy field, these don't have the advantage of charging out in the open. Even though it looks like it's open, it's not really. So again, a fascinating battle that's sort of been set up through here. The French forces have mainly foot soldiers, which is interesting as well. So this is actually they've in this one they don't actually have the masses of cavalry, but the way that this has been scripted is that these are all locked away. So if you're playing this multiplayer, you can't use your forces other than the knights for a couple of turns. So so technically they're supposed to sort of charge in and be absolutely destroyed. I know what I'd be doing if I had the choice. I'd be sort of pulling them back until there was gaps, and then try to run them through the gaps. But anyway, it's a really really cool addition to the overall game. Like it's oops, sorry, I just press X. So this is the actual battlefield itself. Look at the amount of French forces. That is just enormous. I just press the X key, by the way, to do that. So that way I can go out and have a look at battlefields from a bit of distance. All right, well, I've still got stuff to show you guys, and we're not going to be playing anything, of course, but let's just go back out. Hope you're as excited about this as I am. I bet you're not, but anyway, I hope you're excited, because I'm excited, because this is This is the DLC for Medieval. This is the one. Let's just go back out to the main menu. And we'll have a quick look at the campaigns. I won't start any of these. I wish I knew exactly which ones were which. Where do they start? Well, the 100 Years' War, of course, from the English perspective, in through there. 100 Years' War from the French perspective, in through there. They're both campaigns for this particular DLC. You've got the... is that one? No, that's previously. That's from the Reconquista pack. Which one of the Sir John Hawkwood. So this would be like mercenary, I think. Yep. So this would be an interesting one to play through. Actually, that would be sort of all over the place. You've got the Wittislaw Jagelio. I don't know if I've mispronounced that one. This is the fight back against the Teutonic Knights by the like we're looking at the Rus, the Polish and Lithuanian forces. So that would be interesting as well. It's I've probably missed one or two in there as well, but it's a lot of content. A hell of a lot of content now coming into the game, but it's this is for me just the mix of the armies now makes this incredibly interesting to actually sort of play. I think that's about all I need to show you, actually, guys. I think we've sort of gone through everything that we need to have a look at. Yeah, I wish those muddy fields could come in as random stuff that you could bring into the battle, actually, but I'm pretty sure that's been scripted just for Agincourt. So anyway, I did have a look in the editor to see if I could find it, and I couldn't actually locate muddy fields in there. Like you've got marsh, which sort of looks like part of the muddy fields, but it isn't actually muddy fields. Anyway, guys, so yeah, bittersweet moment, because where do we go from here? What comes after this? I'm interested I'm really, actually, speculatively, I've put a comment in down, like what would you like to see? For me, I would love to see Warhammer. I know they won't do it. I don't think they'll do any fantasy, unfortunately. I would love to see that. I would love to have seen, like, even just a small package for the Westeros and Esteros forces from Game of Thrones. I think that would be really interesting. I don't know how, like, then they'd have to start looking at getting dragons and stuff like that. And yeah, Warhammer I would love to see. Lord of the Rings I would love to see as well, because I think that this could be adapted to all three of those franchises. Wheel of Time with so much magic, I don't know. That might be a bit difficult. Anyway, it's sort of. I would love to see that. I mean, that would be for me. That would be I'd be very, very excited if Medieval then went into Field of Glory 2 fantasy, or Field of Glory 2 Warhammer. That would be awesome, actually, to sort of see that. Anyway, I don't know. I don't know what's next. I'm assuming after this. This will be the end of the Medieval run, and then it'll be back to maybe making a Pike and Shot 2 or something like that. Pike and Shot is a game that came out before Field of Glory, even Field of Glory 1. It was really the way of testing what was going to happen with the engine for Field of Glory. It's quite interesting the way it sort of worked. We had Pike and Shot, then we had Sengoku Jidai, which was sort of like a Japanese version of Field of Glory. And then we had Field of Glory 2, which was where they sort of brought in the Ancients. Field of Glory 2 Medieval with the different DLCs. And so I'm assuming that they'll now go back into Pike and Shot again, I would think. I mean, I would love the fantasy, but I'm not sure. Speculation, I guess, is always a bit dangerous. But anyway, I feel like I'm starting to read the last book in an extremely good series. And that I'm that after I finish, I'm going to have a bit of remorse there for a little while, and because I've been looking forward to this DLC for so long. Thanks for watching, guys. Please like and subscribe if you did enjoy the me rambling on for 3/4 of an hour. But I do love this DLC. It's one of the most. I've been looking forward to a lot of things this year, and this DLC pack was right up there amongst the big games like Distant Worlds 2 and Master of Magic and all these other sort of games as well, like Blood Bowl 3. Blood Bowl 3? Yeah, it is 3, I think. Anyway, all of these different sorts of games, and this DLC was right in amongst them. So anyway, we've got it in just a few days' time. Thanks for watching. Catch you next time.